Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first self advocacy story time. My name is Tanisha Dungy, and I am the Director of Community Engagement and Youth Services here at Willard Public Library. I'm here with Mary Fortney, and she is the Community Outreach Coordinator for the Disability Network of Southwest Michigan. So I was wondering, Mary, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and more about our program tonight?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for having us, Miss Tynesha. Yes, I'm with Disability Network Southwest Michigan. We serve 8 counties in Southwest Michigan, so Calhoun County being one of them, but just about every other county that's around us. And we just help remove barriers for people with disabilities to living the life they want to lead. So it could be just about anything, helping them get connected to other services, helping them get ready for employment, whatever you can think of. Right tonight, what we're going to do is what's called Self-Advocacy Storytime, and we are going to tell a story about a real life little girl who advocated for herself, which just means that's a fancy way of saying she stuck up for herself. And she kind of changed the whole way that people with disabilities are now treated in our country.
I'm excited to hear more about this story, but I do want to also mention that you were interviewed by our social services and youth librarian, Stephanie Boyd. And so if people want to learn more about your organization and the things that that you do, they can check that video out as well. Is there a website that they can look for?
There is indeed. You can go to www.dnswm.org. And so that just stands for Disability Network Southwest Michigan.org.
All right. So thank you, Mary. I am actually going to head on out and I will give you the stage so we can hear more about your story and, how we can advocate for ourselves.
Yay. All right. So I am going to share my screen. Nope, maybe I am sharing my screen. Am I? I am.
You are.
Excellent. Okay, so this is Self-Advocacy Storytime with Disability Network Southwest Michigan. And just to let you know real quickly that this is brought to you by what we call our Paving the Way to Self-Determination program. It's a program that's funded by the state of Michigan, Michigan Developmental Disabilities Council. And it's a program that's developed to support children with disabilities and their families. So we kind of raise the expectations that people have for children with disabilities by introducing them to the concepts and tools that they need to lead independent and self-determined lives. So we have opportunities for the young ones like tonight, and then we also have a lot of free stuff on our website for the parents as well. All righty. So tonight's story is called All the Way to the Top, How One Girl's Fight for Americans with Disabilities Changed Everything. And remember, this is a true story, and it is written by Annette Bay Pimentel, and it's a great story. I want to quick ask everybody who's watching if you've ever seen a person who uses a wheelchair, and maybe somebody you know, or maybe even yourself, maybe you use a wheelchair. It's a tool that people use when their legs are not able to walk from one place to another. So nowadays, people with wheelchairs are able to get around pretty well. There's ramps that they can go up, or there's elevators that they can use. But back in the day, when this young lady was a kid, they didn't have that kind of stuff. And so we're going to read this true story about this young lady who used a wheelchair before we had ways for wheelchairs to get around. All right. So it is Jennifer Keelan, and she never wanted her wheelchair to slow her down, but the world around her was built in a way that made it hard for people with disabilities. So when the Americans with Disabilities Act was proposed to Congress, meaning they were going to vote on it, a lot of people joined in and were activists, and they went to Washington, D.C., where the president lives. And they crawled up the Capitol stairs. There's 100 stairs at the United States Capitol. And she did it without her wheelchair. And you will learn why. Jennifer Keelan may be small, but her voice is mighty. Yee-haw! Snowball responds, speeding up from a walk to a trot. Jennifer loves to go fast, but she knows she'll soon have less time for riding since she's finally old enough for school. She can't wait to make new friends. She is ready to go. And you can see she's strapped into riding on her horse there. The school isn't far. Jennifer rolls outside down the sidewalk to the corner. But stop! A 4-inch curb is like a cliff to someone who uses a wheelchair. So here we see Jennifer in her wheelchair, and she's kind of stuck there at the corner because there's not a ramp. It just kind of bumps down. On the next page, we see her grandpa pushing her into the school. Her grandpa eases her wheelchair over the curb. Though the drop jolts Jennifer, she makes it into the building. But stop! The school says Jennifer doesn't belong there because she uses a wheelchair. Look at those stairs. I don't think a wheelchair would get up those stairs. Instead, Jennifer and her mom find a different school that says she can attend kindergarten, but only for part of the afternoon when lunch is over. As Jennifer rolls in each day, everyone is already busy. She has to figure out what's going on and how to join in. Since most kids there had never met somebody who uses a wheelchair, her classmates are confused and some are a little afraid. And in that picture, you can see her there in her wheelchair and the other children kind of looking at her like they're not too sure. You'll never be one of us, some of them say. Jennifer knows they're wrong. She's just a friend waiting to happen. But how do you change someone's mind? She's not sure, but she's not ready to give up. She's a very determined little girl. Jennifer and her family hear about activists who are working to make sure people with disabilities have access to public places like schools. They want to know more, so they attend a meeting. Jennifer has never seen anything like it. The room is filled with grown-ups with all sorts of disabilities. Some are using wheelchairs, some use canes. None of them are sitting around waiting for things to change. They're shouting and laughing and planning a big protest to get wheelchair lifts on buses. So back in these days, people who rode wheelchairs or used wheelchairs could not ride the bus. So here you see her in the meeting, and there's people with all different disabilities sitting around her. And they turn to Jennifer. Do you want to come? Yes, she wants to go. Downtown, Jennifer rolls to the microphone and tells her story. She leads marchers through the streets, chanting, "The people united will never be defeated." It feels good to speak up for what she believes in. She can't wait to do it again. She is raring to go. And here you see her at the microphone and all the people. Some of them are people with disabilities. Some of them aren't. And they're all cheering her on. Here you're going to see pictures of her, all the different cities she traveled to. So she protests in Phoenix. She rolls through the streets of San Francisco, where the Golden Gate Bridge is, and she waves signs in Montreal. The demonstrations don't always change people's mind, but Jennifer's used to that. Even when her neighborhood school finally agrees she can attend, she and her classmates with disabilities aren't allowed to eat in the cafeteria with everyone else. That hurts, but she keeps going. And here you see the teacher telling them, you know what, you can't go in there. And she and her friend who are in wheelchairs are not able to go eat with their other friends. Working with other activists revs her up. Yet she can't help but notice that she and her sister are usually the only kids out there raising their voices. Still, she can't leave all the protesting to grown-ups. She knows firsthand that children with disabilities get ignored too. So she keeps speaking up. And there you see her with all her protester friends. Most of them are adults, and there's her and her sister, and they're holding their signs. When Jennifer is 8, the activists propose a new law called the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. The law says that schools, governments, and businesses have to make room for all people, including those with disabilities. Jennifer feels like dancing. If it passes, it means sidewalks will have curb cuts, buildings will have ramps in addition to steps, and elevators will have braille panels. It means Jennifer and her classmates with disabilities can finally go to the cafeteria with everyone else for lunch. So they've got to get this law passed. Jennifer and her family watch the news for updates on the ADA, but reporters never mention it. She switches off the TV in frustration, wishing she could change reporters' minds on what's worth talking about. And in this picture, you see her sitting there kind of disappointed watching the TV, watching the news. Instead, the Keelans get their updates about the ADA when activist friends call. It's bad news. Members of Congress say that the law will be too complicated and too expensive. They say it's just not worth it. So they think the Congress thinks that it's going to cost too much money to make those changes to those buildings. Since the news station is ignoring people with disabilities, Jennifer and her friends are determined to find another way to make Congress hear their voices. It's go time. Her family buys plane tickets to Washington, D.C. And there her mom is holding up the tickets. She and her sister are all excited. They're going to go to the Capitol where the president lives. As they march down Pennsylvania Avenue, Jennifer has never shouted louder. What do we want? The ADA. When do we want it? Now. So here she's cheering with all the activists, and they're all holding up their signs, and there's the Capitol building. Finally, they reach the U.S. Capitol, but stop. A mountain of steps block Jennifer and other people using wheelchairs from the building where Congress makes the laws. Grown-ups slide out of their wheelchairs and start pulling themselves up the steps. They will make sure members of Congress know that they are there. Jennifer's heart races. This is what she's been shouting about. I want to climb the steps, she says. But stop. The grown-ups think she is too young. You can't do it. Here you see the grown-ups telling her, don't do it. And here you can see also some of the grown-ups that are kind of pulling themselves up. Remember, their legs are not able to carry them. So they're dragging themselves up 100 steps just so they can show all the people in the Capitol how hard it is for people with disabilities. Jennifer knows this is not just about her. It's about her friends at school who were shut out of the cafeteria at lunch. It's about millions of other kids she's never met who get stopped at every turn. Jennifer wants to speak up for all the kids with disabilities who aren't there. I need to climb the steps. She slides out of her wheelchair, scoots along the sidewalk to the bottom of the stairway, puts her hands on the first step. She hauls herself up. Tiny bits of dirt and rock dig into her skin. She drags herself up another step. The crowd roars. Reporters surround her with cameras and microphones, recording her gutsy climb. I'll take all night if I have to, she vows, and she keeps heaving, hauling, dragging herself up those steps. She keeps going all the way to the top. And you can see the photographers, the news people are taking her picture as she's crawling up the stairs, just all kinds of crowds of people. Pictures of Jennifer climbing the steps flash around the world. Reporters are talking about the ADA. Members of Congress see the news, listen to the activists, and finally pass the ADA. So it becomes a law. Laws like the ADA don't change things overnight. Entrances have to be rebuilt. Sidewalks have to be redesigned. Buses re-engineered. And slowest of all, Minds have to change. People's minds have to change. So Jennifer will continue shouting and waving signs, organizing and explaining. She will continue fighting for what she knows is right. Jennifer has places to go, and nothing will stop her now. And you see her now, she's going up a ramp. No steps stopping her here. She's going up a ramp to school. Her friends are there. She's got another friend there who's using a service dog because she looks like she's blind. She's using a cane and a service dog. So now people with disabilities can get into the school. Now, this is a big page that we're not going to look at quite so much today, but if you check this book out of Willard Library, it's got a whole bunch of neat information about fighting for rights with for people with disabilities, and a little bit about Jennifer's disability, which is called cerebral palsy, and the Capitol crawl, which again was a real thing. This is a picture of it right here. I'm going to show you a more close-up picture. That's a timeline, kind of telling us about what happens when and where we are today, right? Because it took us a lot of years to get the curb cuts and the elevators and the ramps. But here's a picture of Jennifer when she was a little girl crawling up the steps, and there's all the news people watching her. And here she is right now today as a grown-up. And then on the far end here, we have a picture of our author. So this is Annette Bay Pimentel, the author, and she has done a few other books. And Nabi H. Ali is also the illustrator, which I think the illustrations are absolutely perfect in this book, really pretty. So that is our book about how she fought for disability rights. We are Disability Network Southwest Michigan. There is our phone number, 269-345-1516. And again, our website is dnswm.org.
All
And let
right.
me stop sharing, I think. There we go.
That was a wonderful story. So, Miss Mary, I was monitoring the comment section. I don't see any questions or comments from any of our viewers, but I do have a question for you that I would like to ask. And
Sure.
I was wondering, it's kind of maybe fearful. Someone may be fearful to be an advocate for themselves. So, what kind of advice would you have for someone who is in a situation similar to Jennifer about how would you go about them advocating for themselves and getting over that fear?
I think it starts really small, right? It's okay to start with the small things. You don't have to go and crawl up the Capitol steps right away, right? But you can, if you're in the classroom and you need help with something, it's okay to ask, right? You don't get what you don't ask for. And so if the teacher doesn't know that you need help, asking for help is usually the first step to advocating for yourself or sticking up for yourself. And then also knowing what you're good at. So I know the things that I'm good at, but I also know the things that I need help with. And that's okay to ask for help.
Mm-hmm. I also just want to commend the publisher because, being a librarian, sometimes we don't see much representation for people with different disabilities or abilities. So that is really excellent. But I also find that there's still a shortage of books, especially for children. So, what should we do to kind of get these publishers to nudge them a little bit to make sure that there's more representation?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know if I'm the person to do that. You might know more about how to do that. I think so, just continuing to bring it to people's attention, right? We are getting more books. We have about 7 stories right now that we use in our self-advocacy story time, and there are really a lot more than that, but those are the ones that we have the permission from the publishers to use. I know that Willard Library's got quite a few of those. I think just, reaching out to those publishers that
Mhm.
maybe have already made strides and making suggestions and following them on social media.
I do think so too. in the initially it was more like diverse voices and own voices, and we wanted to get those mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And really what that means is people want to see themselves, but they also want to learn about other people's experiences. And once we really fought hard to get that representation, I think it's just one more step in that. And so circulating, checking these books out so they don't leave the library collection, but also purchasing them, because sometimes money talks. So when publishers see that more people are purchasing these books, they will be more apt to bring more forth. So I think also that's something that we can use our purchasing power to make sure that publishers give us more of what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've started my own little library at my office, right? When I see a good book, I'm sure to buy it and stick it in my little library that I
Mm-hmm.
use, for our kids programs or for just for having, right? Just for that support.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just for kids who may have a disability, but it's good for kids to just see all types of people, right? So when they do finally see someone in person, it's not like, oh my gosh, what do I do? But more of a caring type of situation, or what I'm trying to say, you
I
know.
do. And the thing is even in this story today, we learned that Jennifer was no different than any other little girl. She wanted to eat lunch with her friends and she wanted to go to school with her friends. And, so uh, at first, some of those friends were a little afraid of her, but she
Mm-hmm.
knew that, they just needed to see that she was a kid just like anybody else.
And I think that's what's most important about these story times. There are more things that we have in common than things that we have that make us different. So I really do appreciate you tonight. I don't see any more questions, but we will be doing this again next week, Tuesday, October
24th, I think.
24th at 6 p.m. And you want to tell our viewers the exciting news about next week?
I do. So, actually, it's a series of 4 books, and we haven't decided which one we're going to do yet because I'm kind of plotting and planning. But there is a series of books called Completely Me, and they are all real stories about kids with disabilities and just about things that they're really good at and how they enjoy life. But the really cool thing is the author of those books is going to join me next week for this Facebook Live. And again, we haven't decided which one of us is going to read. We might have to fight over it. But, she's we might choose to do the book that is actually written about her. The first book she wrote was called Completely Me, and she wrote it about herself because she was a little girl with a disability. And then she's written other books about a child with ADHD, another child with Down syndrome, a child with cerebral palsy. And these are all real kids that she's known throughout the years. So her name is Dr. Justine Green, and she's pretty amazing. So I highly recommend you tune in next week to see her. She's great.
All right. So, Miss Mary Fortney from the Disability Network of Southwest Michigan, thank you so much for sharing your story with us tonight. And I look forward to next week where we get to interact with the author as well. So, you guys tune in. You have questions for the author or Mary, please make sure that you leave them in the comment section and we'll address them next week as well. But for tonight, we are going to say goodbye for now. And thank you for watching. Have a great evening.